Martians have landed.
But we ordered Chinese.
No one would have believed that as we approached the beginning of summertime 2021, as we come out of pandemic lockdown, the Kilt-Man would finally deliver on his oft-promised, long-delayed review of 1953's classic sci-fi action-adventure drama, The War of the Worlds. Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man, at your services. Look at that, a kick-ass space babe. Woohoo! She can invade my territory anytime. How are you all, folks? I hope you're all doing very well. Now here is the original score from Leith Stevens for Byron Haskin and George Powell's 1953 interpretation of H.G. Wells' classic 1898 novel, The War of the Worlds. It had been written and serialised earlier than that, but it finally reached its novel publication in 1898. Nobody could ever argue that H.G. Wells is the grandfather of pretty much all of sci-fi's themes. He created time travel, invisibility, Dr. Moreau and transformations of man into beast and beast into man, the whole metamorphosis, the whole changing of physical attributes, and alien invasions. A profound atheist, he saw progress and technology as being, well, let's be honest, a lot less advantageous to civilization than everyone else seems to think. Every time we have technology, it just creates bigger, more destructive weapons. No one's ever happier. And yet the scientists just keep on digging and delving and splitting atoms and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, his work was prescient, it was absolutely prophetic as well. And so, this rambling, you know the score, you know this. I've promised this video to many people so many times that finally, I'm doing it. And it's prompted because, as I said in a sort of very recent video, I managed to get my hands on the Australian imprint release from a 4K scan of War of the Worlds. And a mighty fine thing it is too. So, 1953, finally, after many years of trying to get a film adaptation of War of the Worlds off the ground, with directors such as Hitchcock, Cecil B. DeMille, and Sergei Eisenstein, who was one of the first who was meant to be doing it, a Russian filmmaker, Battleship Potemkin, and obviously some people didn't like the idea of him doing it, but eventually he was going to do it. Then he got cold feet and moved on to other things. Cecil B. DeMille wanted it, Hitchcock wanted it, as I say. A lot of people, this figured loomed large in their imagination. The book was an unparalleled international classic, and the story, obviously, Orson Welles, no relation, did his infamous 1938 radio broadcast, which everyone says, you know, all of America panicked, and because it did it in a proper sort of documentary style, newsreel reporting, like the invasion had really taken place. Middle Americans, rurals, got their pitchforks and shotguns, mounted perimeter defences and all that, and panic in the streets. When people look back at it now, they kind of say, well, that didn't really happen, unless you're a complete idiot, you know. It was kind of, the drama is, it's massively sort of, you know, promoted with, look, this is a drama. If you miss the start of it, which it does say, this is a radio drama, written by so-and-so, based on this, and produced by Orson Welles, then you kind of, the game would be given away. But it's still a classic piece of mythology in the annals of War of the Worlds. And of course, Jeff Wayne's elaborate, fantastic, lavish, so cult revered musical version of War of the Worlds. Just outstanding. You heard a little bit of the music there before. But and that's worthy of study in its own right. But anyway, folks. Right away I'm going to say that this is not my favourite sci-fi film of all time. Very, very far from it. Although I do love it, and I begun to love it and revere it a bit more in the last sort of couple of decades, really. When I was a kid, obviously I was blown away by it, like the colours, you know, the Technicolor. It's glorious, isn't it? Isn't it funny how even with the advent of CGI now and so much digital manipulation that filmmakers, for example, Quentin Tarantino, Dario Argento, scour the world for old 3-strip Technicolor film stock to use in their movies, because no matter how much digital manipulation you can do, you cannot emulate those rich, vivid, bold, in-your-face colours, which this film totally celebrates. So, anyway, as I say, you can actually hear the heat ray building up here, and you're going to hear that death ray sizzle and crackle in a second, because I've got some sound effects here too. No expense spared, of course. So, the script finally went George Pal, uber producer who would become a director as well, loved Wells' stuff. He would go on to direct The Awesome, The Time Machine, which I've covered definitively previously on the channel. He hired special effects supremo Byron Haskin to direct the movie. But George Pal, as everyone knows George Pal, he was kind of mentoring Haskin and like, look, I'm really in charge of this. Every frame of this film has George Pal's stamp all over it in glorious Technicolor. And he was building up his own repertoire and knowing what to do. He oversaw everything. This really is a George Pal movie in such a way that The Time Machine is a natural extension. Full colour, vivid, glorious effect, and it's a George Pal movie. But anyway, so making an adaptation of H.G. Wells' 19th century English story set in the southern counties and the Martian invasion takes place. It's all set around there. Obviously, even H.G. Wells himself said, after so many attempts to get this made, that, look, the topics I covered in that book now, no one's bothered about it anymore. It's all old hat, don't bother with it. But of course, with 1938's radio dramatisation and the eve of destruction being World War II and America's sudden, swift involvement in it, that this, in Eisenhower's and the McCarthyist aftermath of World War II, suddenly this seemed very prescient. Technology, the atom bomb, we bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and everyone was terrified of a Russian invasion. If Russians had the same technology, what chance would America and the Western world stand? So everyone says now, like, oh, well, the War of the Worlds, this version isn't really a sort of an observation of, you know, Reds under the beds and anti-communism. And yet it is, because it's about Americans being afraid of being massively invaded by a far superior technological enemy. So it's all there. And the impotence of the American military, which is what this film totally delivers. After World War II, where America said, oh, we won the war, we changed technology, we bombed Japan out of it. Without us joining the Allies in Europe, you'd never have won against the Germans. And, you know, yeah, it's very possible as well. American firepower, American might, and just sheer numbers. But in the face of the Martian invasion, which has now been relocated from 19th century rural England to California. Yay! Is it Linda Rosa or somewhere? Just outside of LA, up in the lovely sort of lush hills, where at the time of the meteorites coming down, streaking across the sky, and everyone's in the town, oh, what's that? It came down over the hills over there. And, that was a meteor, wasn't it? Well, isn't it lucky that we've got a bunch of scientists who are out having a little vacation up in the hills, headed up by Gene Barry. And Gene Barry plays, I've forgotten the guy's name. What's his actual name as a character in it? I've forgotten. Doesn't matter, let's call him Gene Barry. Because he's not a good actor, and that's the thing about it. The two leads in this movie, he is there, and he's our observation point for the audience. He's our conduit. He's the guy that explains when the big blackout takes place and the Martians are there, you know, and the screw top is beginning to twist and turn and the death ray is going to come up, all that sort of stuff. He explains about, like, basically what would be an EMP, So the watches all stop, the lights all go out. The cars are still rolling though. But then again, there was no, what electronics were in the cars at that time? I don't know. Probably not much, if any. So, but the science, he's there to try to offer for the audience, us, a scientific explanation as to what's going on, why this happens. And he is what would be the everyman character in H.G. Wells' story. And the everyman character that, of course, Tom Cruise would play in the Steven Spielberg version, which is the post 9/11 adaptation of it, which I think is extraordinarily good. After hating it when it first came out, and I've long been published on this, I wrote extensively about that film. I despised it, and then I did a complete and utter 180 on it, and ended up absolutely adoring it. Very strange. It's only never happens to me normally, where I completely reverse all my opinions about something, but I do adore Spielberg's vision on that. So anyway, this guy is drafted in to come and have a look, and he's got another couple of scientists there as well, one of whom is the great Robert Cornthwaite, who plays Dr. Carrington in The Thing from Another World, which is my favourite sci-fi movie of all time. Sci-fi monster creature feature. It is just the best from the vintage era. And although he's given old age makeup, because that film came out in 1951, so this is a couple of years afterwards, and that was black and white, and they've aged him in that, and he's one of the main characters. In this, he's just got his normal face, and he's in colour, and he seems about 30 years younger. And to see him without the old age makeup, you look at it, he looks just like Robert Englund, not with the Freddy Krueger makeup on. The guy's a bit better looking than that, but he has got that sort of impish look and that nose of Robert Englund. And it is strange, because when I watch the film now, I just see Robert Englund, and I have to remind myself, no, that's Dr. Carrington from The Thing from Another World. Anyway, those guys are there, and they can't offer much, because no one knows what these things are. They bury themselves in the ground, but they leave some people out there to, while they have a hoedown back in the village, back in the town, and he's getting to know Anne Robinson, who is a big fan of Gene Barry's Scientist, and yet doesn't know what he looks like, and she's waxing lyrical about how much she adores what this guy has done. Do you know him? Oh yeah, pretty well. He's me! How come she didn't know? Anyway, so they're all in the town, but they leave 3 guys up there, sort of, just on sentry duty. And all of a sudden that screw begins to work its magic, and they approach closer. They realise something's coming out, but we don't want to frighten them off. They've landed here. I mean, they're very sort of, they're peaceniks really, not beatniks, but peaceniks. Even though they're rednecks, and one's a Mexican as well. Let's not leave him out of the equation. So they tie a white rag to a pole and try to friends. And of course, what is great about this movie, and it was Albert Nozaki, who was a Tokyo-born special effects guy, moved to America after the attack on Pearl Harbor with his family, and worked great in the movies, and came up with the new version of the Martian war machines for this movie. Yes, we know that in the book and in various other versions, they are the tripods, but they struggled to realise, how are we going to make these things move? If something's got 3 legs, how does it actually move? And the way that Wells didn't describe how it moved, they just moved. They didn't say how they did it, what order the legs moved in. So they were trying to work out, well, how's it going to, is it going to be like a one-legged man on crutches? So like one leg goes forward and then 2 crutches go forward, and then like that. Well, they get around it because they don't have tripods in this. What Nozaki does, he comes up with these gorgeous, elegant, super sleek, manta ray shaped warcraft, and the cobra head rises out of that like an angle poise. Actually, it's very similar to what my camera is sitting on right now. Thinking about it, that's kind of unnerving, and especially with the Martian sitting on my shoulder here, and it just comes out and does all its business. But these are sleek, elegant, they're gorgeous. The colour scheme is fantastic, and again, in a kind of sort of reference to the fact that they're meant to be on tripods. If you watch the film, they're floating on a glittering sort of downburst of anti-magnetic rays, which are meant to be, these things aren't flying, they're hovering on a bed of these power jets, and hovering and going through the streets and around the canyons and destroying Earth and all that kind of stuff. So it is a really good idea, and you do see it crackling away. And that heat ray, that was actually the welding sparks, animation combined with welding sparks blown in one direction. And one direction that's important, I don't mean the group, I don't mean them at all, because something I've noticed, and I've noticed it previously, but it really got brought home to me watching it this time, is that every single time you see a meteorite hitting the ground, which denotes another Martian landing, they're going from the right of the frame to the left. Every time the Martian warships come up, the manta ray, cobra-headed warships come up, they travel from right to left. Every single time. A couple of times, yeah, the heat ray might go in a different direction, but mainly from right to left. And there's only one shot during the war-torn devastation of LA itself, where the city is just crumbling, it's in ruins, and Gene Barry's running across the street, and two of the Martian war machines are hovering down the street towards him, and briefly they're coming sort of straight at you, but every other time they're going literally from right to left across the screen. And that kind of bugs me a little bit now. It's almost like, couldn't you have done a bit of variation on this? Why is it like that? Why have you done that? And I've not heard anyone say why, but anyway, just an observation of mine. So obviously these guys waving the white flag, friends, stop and say hello. And they get immolated in this bright lava colour, flashbang wallop. And when the townspeople go up there, they discover the burnt husks, the outline of their bodies, the three of them lying there, and it's meant to sort of replicate the shadow effect of the bodies and victims of the atomic bomb and radiation blasts. And it is kind of creepy, and you're like, oh Jesus. So, you know, you can see why this film garnered an X certificate in the UK. It's hard to believe, really, but it's the themes, it's the devastation, which there's no holds barred on that. So they discover, like, these guys aren't as friendly as we might have hoped they'd be. They don't want to come and dance at the old hoedown. Oh no, the square dance. So they call in the military in the form of the US Marines, who turn up there with cannon, howitzer, tanks, artillery, mortars, tons and tons of troops and trucks. No good. And they wait and they watch. Well, they always attack at dawn. Have you fought Martians before, have you? Everybody attacks at dawn, don't they? So be prepared at dawn. And at dawn, the Martians do follow the screenplay and they do attack and lay waste to everything. Everything is blasted, immolated, lit up in like a lava lamp. Boom! Tanks, trucks, cannon, everything destroyed. Just scorch marks on the ground. The US Marines have failed big time. And so everyone runs, escapes. Gene Barry and Anne Robinson now, who's, what is their name? Sylvia Van Buren, I think her name is. And I still can't remember what his name is in it. Oh, that's annoying. Just call him Gene Barry. And they are profoundly wooden. And that is a huge detriment to this movie. Anne Robinson is so, I don't mean Anne Robinson from The Weakest Link and all that shit. No. Although Anne Robinson is the weakest link in this movie, her perpetual screaming and overacting, it just, oh God. Whereas he's wooden, she overacts, and it's horrible. What you don't get in this version of the movie is that Gene Barry's character is also an ace pilot. He was a pilot in his like pre-scientist days, so he find a plane, and while all the army, the military's being, you know, eradicated, they flee in that. But in a great shot, they overfly, like, well, it's a miniature valley, but down in the valley are lots of the other Martian manta rays, again going from right to left. And they manage to crash into the trees and escape and hide while these things are flying over. They take refuge in a farmhouse, which is the famous sequence, of course, because that's when you're actually going to see one of the Martians, which, designed again by Nozaki, but sculpted and built and actually portrayed by the great Charles Gomorrah.
the last years of the 19th century that human affairs
Richard Burton.
from the time
Interrupt. If you're going to be interrupted by anyone, make it
no
Richard
one
Burton.
dreamed we would be.
Sorry, mate. You're out of here. Your old hat. And but Charles Gamora is the one that is in the suit. He had played in an original version of Island of the Lost Souls, which is behind the Dr. Moreau back in the 1930s, which I've reviewed as well. He's just done some of the makeup there, and he's also in the film, in the makeup. He was Hollywood's go-to guy for gorillas. You look, he's got about 400 bloody credits, and almost every single one of them is playing a gorilla. I have covered him before because he's sensational, and he sculpted this design for the it's got a cyclopean eye, but with just 3 colours in it. So the 3-strip Technicolor works, a dream, and it's a sort of shitty brown little turd thing with. They've only got 3 fingers with suckers on the end of them and big long arms, but they've got pulsing veins across the torso and the shoulders and the chest, and it's you see Anne Robinson, Sylvia Van Buren, sees it fleetingly moving through the trees outside the farmhouse and screams all over again, and then it comes up behind it in the famous, well, I've probably got a picture of it here somewhere, it's probably on there somewhere, but anyway, and these 3 fingers, these sucker fingers come up and have a little poke on his shoulder. Hello. So of course he picks up a friggin' axe and chucks the axe at it, and it runs off with this incredible sound effect, which is achieved by recording cats fighting and then playing it backwards, and I think adding guitars to it as well, and it has this weird shrieking noise, but it runs off like. Folks, it looks shit. I know, it's a classic design. I can show you it. Of course I can show you it. I have a picture here. Somewhere. Oh well, there you go. Don't know if you can you see that? There he is. Hello! I'm a colourful turd. I mean, he is kind of like that. But with like 1 eye, 3 colours. It's very similar though, very similar to E.T. Go on, fuck off home. Go on. Sick of you hanging around here, trying to make phone calls, using up our Wi-Fi. God, piss off. And but you've also had, like you see, of course, brilliantly in Spielberg's version, you have a sort of robotic video camera eye comes in and creeps around the farmhouse looking for them. And you've got a great shock moment where you think it's gone, it suddenly comes back and Sylvia turns into it like, and it's there. And again, it's got a cyclopean, tri-coloured eye. So Gene Barry picks up an axe and chops the head off this thing, which he then manages to wrap up in his jacket and swaddling clothes, which they will then take back in their big escape. They'll get back to LA and they'll go back to the Scientific Institute where Dr. Carrington, whatever his name is in this, who knows, Robert Englund, Robert Cornthwaite is there, and they'll study this, they'll wire it up, and they'll see how the Martians are seeing them through a green sort of haze and their colour spectrum. Lots of shots of everyone looking into the lens like this, only swathed in green, and they try and work out a way of combating them. We must study all this stuff and we can work a way of, fighting back. But of course, in the meantime, these Martian war machines have landed everywhere. They're all across the globe, all the major cities. Lots of stock footage of Dresden and other wartime blitzes and mass evacuations, and it works well. So but you're seeing that this is on a global scale. So in a scene which kind of reminds me a bit of George Romero's great proto sort of zombie movie, The Crazies, where a horrible toxin has turned the townspeople into complete maniacs, violent maniacs, and the army goes in to try and close it down with an iron fist. This is like 1973-74, The Crazies, and the scientist, who's also the guy with 1 eye and the eye patch in Dawn of the Dead, who's giving the sobering commentary on the apocalypse of zombies taking over the planet, and he's the scientist that works out a cure. And in a great sequence at the end of The Crazies, in a big mad panic in the establishment, he's knocked down the stairs and his discovery is ruined. So basically, bingo, man's fucked up again. And that's kind of what happens here. They have all the instruments and tools to try to find some way of combating the Martian attack. And the Martians are now laying siege to LA. Every other device and weapon, planes, including the big flying wing, which looks like a stealth plane. And it was actually, in real life, it was a disaster. It didn't really work. But it does look suitably futuristic and space age. And you can imagine audiences going like, my God, we've got one of those. Alien vessel itself. And it was. And its shape became the stealth bomber. So, but that doesn't work because they drop an atomic bomb on a big gathering of the Martian war machines. But the Martians also have this great sort of glass bowl effect, like a bell jar, which shimmers only when they're getting bombarded by, arsenals of, batteries of weapons and ballistics. And this bomb drops on them, but doesn't stop them. And then, oh shit, if even the atom bomb can't stop them, what the hell are we going to do now? So they're laying waste to everything around the world, and LA in particular, in some great footage of buildings collapsing and these ships going down the streets, destroying town halls and civic centres and landmarks. But mob rule has taken over, which is, of course, is one of the things that H.G. Wells always said about when technology takes over, man just becomes insane and will turn upon himself. When the chips are down, man cannot be trusted to act with himself, to act with his fellow man for the benefit of the rest of the human race. I struggle with that line there. H.G. Wells didn't struggle with it though. He put it into almost every one of his bloody books. And so you've got great scenes of mob rule in the streets, and Gene Barry has gone back to get something else from the scientific installation, while Sylvia Van Buren and the other scientists are driven off in a school bus. But he gets back in this pickup truck, this van, this lorry to drive off. But the mob just descend on him. They haul him out. He gets a good smack in the face. He's like, no, they're scientific instruments. We need them. They're in the back of this truck. And the mob get in there and drive the truck off. And he's like, oh, Jesus. But you see the craziness of people out there. One guy's got a suitcase full of money. That is great, isn't it? A suitcase full of money and other prized jewels and that, like. And he's trying to get in the back of this truck. And he's going, look, I can pay, I've got money. And this guy's going like, what good's that going to do you now? Bang! Puts him off the truck as well. And poor MPs, military policemen are getting battered in the street. That's quite nasty. One guy's getting attacked by a mob. Even though he's got a helmet on, like someone puts a bottle over his head. But Gene Barry's now struggling to find where's Sylvia gone. Even though they're not really... If you listen to the commentary that they give, and you listen to a lot of other people saying, what the backstory of these two characters are going to be, and their arc, they're not lovers. It's just that they've survived together through so much. He has an affection for her, but they're not lovers. Well, anyway, he's going after her, and she's the son of a preacher man, and he's the preacher that during that dawn attack, when the US Marines have surrounded all of these Martian machines. This priest, there must be a better way. He walks up and he's got the crucifix out and a Bible in one hand. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And cue one of the first moments of this girl screaming her bloody head off. And he gets vaporized, of course. They don't believe in God or priests. No, we're gonna fry him. So he's incinerated. But so she's the daughter of a priest. I think she's the niece of the priest. Let's get this right. And so Gene Barry's now running through all the streets, and it's just debris everywhere. And he finds the school bus sign from the front of the bus. Oh, they must have got the bus as well. Oh no, where could she be? No, I know where she'd be. Yeah, she's related to a priest. She's going to be in a church. This is the eve of mankind's destruction. Where else would anyone go? So he goes from church to church, and everyone's praying, but there's destruction outside. And then finally he gets in the church, and he finds there's other scientists there. What happened? The bus got lost, and it's all over. And they're all injured, all these scientists, these boffins. And in another church, he will find it. And at the last minute, of course, they're all praying to God, praying for a miracle. Only that can save us now. Yeah, you know what's happening. The smallest creatures on God's planet. He saw fit to put them on the planet as well. Bacteria. Yeah, the Martians haven't quite done their homework, so all of a sudden, they're all succumbing to some kind of earthly bacteriological virus. COVID-19, anyone? Yes, it's there. Everything ties in. So they begin, these craft begin to judder and wobble, and then crash into buildings and tumble into the sidewalk and all that. And in the great scene, one of these little sort of doorways, a ramp comes down, and they all emerge from the church to see what's happened. They all crashed. It's a miracle. And this three-fingered hand comes out. It should go like that. And this Martian obviously dies. And Gene Barry, very foolishly, he touches it. You know, they've just been killed by a plague. What do you think you're going to catch from it, you know? So he touches it, and its veins stop pulsating, which is a good effect. And it's dead. We wanted a miracle. We got a miracle. But of course, you've got Sir Cedric Hardwicke does the narration. A bit like you hear from, oh Christ, why did I forget everyone's name? Welshman. Richard Burton, that's it. Oh God. See, this is why I don't do these things. I delay some of these reviews because I know I'm going to get all these things wrong. Richard Burton's narration, of course, from the Jeff Wayne War of the Worlds, and Liam Neeson in a later incarnation of it. But Sir Cedric Hardwicke opens up with that narration at the start. He'll do a mid-film sort of monologue about how the world is falling to bits and the Martians are taking over everywhere. And he'll do the final bookend saying about what defeated the Martians. And it's lovely, it's lovely. This film was written by Barry Lyndon, British screenwriter, and I think a poet as well. And it's a literate script, but it delivers far too much in the way of military, prophets of doom, and then this thing at the end, which is not what Wells wrote. They pray for a miracle in the church, but it's almost like saying, look, you know, if you depict priests in this day and age, you're going to have to show that people still have a belief in all this. We've had 2 world wars, for God's sake. We're now approaching we're in the atomic age, and we could be facing another World War III with Russia. So we've got to show hope and people. And this is a clever conceit, really. H.G. Wells didn't do this because he was a staunch atheist, but as indeed is myself. But in times of crisis, you'll find that most people, no matter what their beliefs, and even if they haven't got any, if the chips are down, you will suddenly find God quite quickly. I've seen it happen. I know many people who've gone through a crisis and that's where they've turned. So in many ways, this conclusion is fitting for the time the film came out, and it also does tie into, you know, human nature. Can I pray for a miracle and get another one of these? I said I was an atheist, didn't I? I said it out loud. No more whiskey for Kilt-Man. Until later. But, so I don't mind really, although it's a bit half-assed, I don't mind that that's there, that conclusion, that even the scientists turn to find faith, because science has failed. Everything that they've done to stop the Martians has failed. The military might of mankind has failed. What's left? What is left? You pray for a miracle. You pray for something, of course, whether it's God or just, you know, a tribal spirit chief, you know, whatever. You're praying for something beyond to try and lift us out of it. So in this film, you can take from it what you want. And back in the 50s, you can bet that the audiences definitely thought, God save the day. And the line is even there. God saw fit to put the smallest creation things, parasites, virus, bacteria, and that's what saved the day. So it's still God that's done it, but they can't claim that they prayed for a miracle. That's where it came from. They made that, you know, appear. But Leith Stevens' score, it's wonderful. It's of its time, and I like the fact that there's no theremin in this. And there's no like electronic tonalities apart from the heat ray. and all that kind of special effects, sound effects stuff, which is really, really good and dazzling. But the likes of The Thing from Another World and The Day the Air Stood Still and then Forbidden Planet would use extensive theremin in the first two examples, but just electronic tonalities for Forbidden Planet. And this film goes back to proper full orchestral symphony, and it sounds wonderful. It sounds very old school now, but it still works. So the action, the effects, the colour, outstanding. There's a great shot of one of the generals you've got to know, and he runs out, and the green, because the Martians have got like the heat ray, but they've also got these green sort of thunderbolt little blobby blasts as well. And he gets hit with one of them, and he glows green, and you see a skeleton inside. Urgh! Now that was deemed very horrific at the time, and you only see that once. So no one else getting zapped like that will you see their inner workings, as it were. It's only a brief shot, but you've got two American Marines who are engulfed in flames when the base camp goes up in a big conflagration, and they blunder around in flames and on fire. And that's quite horrific, you know, for its time. That's quite a vivid image, somebody on fire. You've also got, I find it quite amusing that in that, where they're hunkered down before the dawn raid, and the Marines are all in there, and the priest is in there, and they allow the priest in as well. The military are a bit understanding. People say that the film is very sort of anti-military. It shows the impotence of them. It's not anti-military at all. In fact, it's putting them in a good light. They're very accommodating of everybody, all the citizens and civilians. They're very accommodating across the board. To let a priest in there who does not believe in what their tactics are, and to listen to him as well, you know, they wouldn't do that. So, but you've got this top-ranking general comes in, and I've forgotten the guy's name, of course, but he looks like J. Jonah Jameson, and he says, "I'm just an observer." And of course, he knows everybody. He knows Gene Barry's scientist as well, and they were to school together or something like that. You know, you taught me how to use a ray gun. Remember? Might that come in handy? Do you think? And he comes and says, "I'm not in command here, folks." And then he is. It just takes over completely, basically. And then you'll see him later on when they bring the atomic bomb in and all this. And only a few people actually get sort of chemical warfare suits. Everyone else just kind of running around. You've got another guy from The Thing from Another World who is one of the great voiceover artists of all time. And yeah, you've guessed, Paul Frees. Ah, you thought I'd forgotten his name. Paul Frees. He plays one of the scientists in the North Pole scientific camp in The Thing from Another World. And his voice, you see him as one of the, I think he's the second reporter, but this guy, forget Charles Gamora playing 1,001 gorillas across the board in every movie under the sun. This guy has done voiceovers in everything. He's acted, he's appeared, he's done, when people have been dubbed over because their voices weren't deemed effective enough, he's done the voiceover for them. And he's also in The Thing, and he's in this as another reporter, delivering portentous, proclamations in the sort of, this is just before they're going to use the atomic bomb on the Martians. And it's great to have him there as well. It's a little The Thing from Another World reunion with Dr. Carrington and this guy. I think his name is Dr. Voorhees. Yeah, first name Jason. And it's just great. So you've got a colourful roster of supporting players who are great. The scenes of panic in the streets, that's really good. That's really vivid. And they're the things which I think would probably disturb an audience almost as much back in those days as seeing someone get vaporised by an alien heat ray. And when you watch the film now, we all know what people are like. And of course Spielberg's version really does take in mob mentality, and you see the knock-on effect. Everyone trying to steal a car, whoever gets the car next is going to be hauled out and shot. So no one's going to win in this situation. It's just panic, mania on the streets. And this film does capture that with a bit more violence than you'd expect from 1953. So, folks, there's probably a hell of a lot more I can say about this. And I've kind of built up to doing this as well, but that said, I love it, but I also, it's a bit too epic, but too short a movie. Some would say that's a really good thing, but I want to see more of what's happening elsewhere. If you're going to bother to show what's happening, albeit in sort of newsreel footage and stock, library footage of Dresden and blitzes. That's all well and good, but if you're going to go that far, I want to see more. I want to see what Ray Harryhausen would have done. And Ray Harryhausen also was going to be doing this movie at one stage, but his design for the Martians didn't meet with approval, and arguably he got to do his own version with Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, where he nicks footage from this movie, the LA town hall collapsing on itself, and it gets hit with a death ray. Well, he nicked that and put it into his black and white Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, but which is just a sort of more action-packed version of this, if anything. But it's wonderful stuff. Harryhausen, it'd be interesting to see what he'd have come up with. And it mentioned Sergei Eisenstein from Battleship Potemkin, which of course has the big battle where they're getting bombed and they're running down the steps, and the baby carriage, like in The Untouchables, which is a reference there, the baby carriage is going down the steps and the mother's screaming and all that. Well, you have a very similar shot, but it's basically what it is. It's kind of like, we can't rip that off. But Eisenstein was going to be here at one stage, so let's just not forget the way that he ushered in big screen cinema spectacle, which he did alongside Cecil B. DeMille. And you have people panicking down this huge big edifice in LA, they're running down the steps, and a child's ball is bouncing down the steps like that. And another, I think a soldier or someone picks it up and catches it, gives it back to the child. So you've got that's a definite, a wink wink, knowing reference to Eisenstein there. But whether you say this is Byron Haskin's movie or it's George Powell who directed most of it, it's George Powell's movie. I'm sure Haskin had a bit like Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg with Poltergeist. Of course, Spielberg always says, no, Tobe Hooper directed that movie, but I was there every single day looking over his shoulder, every single day, which he was. So that Spielberg's stamp is all over it. Same with this. Haskin would have been directing, but George Powell was leaning over his shoulder and advising on every single setup, every single shot, every single theme being explored. In a later version, a later adaptation for radio, everyone was saying, you're going to use Gene Barry and Anne Robinson. They didn't. They used Dana Andrews, another famous, very wooden American actor from one of the greatest supernatural thrillers of all time, Jack Turner's Night of the Demon, and they bring in Dana Andrews. Now, when I watch War of the Worlds, I often think of Dana Andrews playing the Gene Barry role, because although people go, he was terrible, so wooden, but in Night of the Demon, that's necessary. He's playing a profound skeptic whose skepticism is gradually eroded throughout the course of the movie as he encounters more and more of what's genuinely happening. The thing I came here to debunk, oh shit, it's real, my life is up, there's a demon after me. And the way he portrays that is very similar to the growing, dawning realisation that Gene Barry has that, shit, we can't fight this. And now I've lost Sylvia, and he's panicking in the streets, going from church to church. I just find that very similar, and I think it's kind of neat that Dana Andrews would go on to portray that character in a subsequent radio dramatisation. So, folks, I think I've covered it all. And you can't deny as well the huge impact that H.G. Wells' novel had upon the genre. It basically created the sci-fi alien invasion genre. That's what it did. Undeniable, inarguable, and the colourful effects, the sound design, the 3-track stereo when it's released as well. So, innovations in sound design as well, cinematic presentation, the Technicolor, the effects, everything about this movie then had a ripple effect throughout the rest of the genre. So you're seeing lots more alien invasion, you're seeing lots more colour being used, you're seeing lots of special effects and sound effects, alien craft. Incidentally, George Powell, Byron Haskin went on to do one of my favourite sci-fi movies ever of this era, Robinson Crusoe on Mars. And those manta ray flying war machines would appear in that as sort of alien slavers on Mars. Again, it's Mars. Mars was always the place to go to, wasn't it? So, anyway, or the place to come from. Folks, War of the Worlds from 1953. It's an absolute classic. Imprint's version, rivals Criterion's version. Picture, sound, outstanding. Loads of great features on it. Loads of great commentary tracks. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Leith Stevens' score, wonderful. If you can get hold of it, it's wonderful. And the sound effects there, which you're hearing, because here it is. Let's get onto it again. Let's blast ourselves with the heat ray again. It's coming. The electronic oscillation, and there's guitar in here as well. And it's sort of slowed down and played in reverse. It's all clever stuff. That'd be a good ringtone, that. Come on, I'm waiting for the zzz. Come on, get on with it. And wave me white flag here. Come on. Friends. We sent him home. We gave him back. Of course, Mars Attacks, Tim Burton expertly riffed on all of this. Where's this fucking... Oh, it's all bluff. It's not going to happen at all. Ah, you Martian pussy. Folks, I have been always shall be Kilt-Man at your services. Right, lots more to come. This was a complete ramshackle thing. I know, the more I build these up, the worse they turn out to be. But you know that. Hopefully, you put up with it. Gonna see you all. Laters. You got a man from Mars? Where? On ice, buddy. On ice.